Good morning, and thank you for joining me. In today's weather update, we will be examining an upcoming pattern that is, in my professional opinion, the most promising one for early to mid-December that I have observed in all my years of forecasting for this channel. It genuinely appears that we are in for repeated waves of very cold Arctic air, which will bring multiple opportunities for snowfall. We are currently tracking a major snowstorm as it moves across the Midwest, the Plains, the Great Lakes, and the Ohio Valley. We will also be looking ahead at a system developing for the East Coast in just a few days, and our forecast models are beginning to suggest even more activity is on the way. We are truly looking at a remarkably active pattern ahead of us, so let us begin by looking at the current conditions. Very quickly, I just want to show you this massive snow system that is ongoing. You can see how many states are being significantly impacted by this event. As we zoom in on the map, we can see parts of Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, where a major college football game was scheduled for 12 o'clock. That game is likely over by the time you are watching this broadcast. But it is quite something to see Indiana, Ohio, and even northern Kentucky all experiencing impacts from this one system. The primary area of heavy snowfall is located right in this quadrant for these particular areas. We are already seeing exceptionally heavy snowfall accumulating, which is creating a very serious situation. Let's now move on to the model guidance, beginning with the European forecast model. We can see this system moving through. I have been mentioning in our online weather discussion group, for which you can find information in the description below, that we would have had a different scenario for that game. Had it been an evening game, say at 7 in the evening on Saturday there, in the small town of Ann Arbor, Michigan, we would have likely seen more moderate to heavy snowfall moving into the area. The field would have probably been covered in snow, and visibility would have been very poor. So we did miss what could have been a very memorable weather event for that game, although I do expect some flakes were flying, which is always a wonderful sight to see. However, let us return to the forecast, as this is a weather channel, not a sports program. I must remind myself of that from time to time. By tomorrow, we see that low-pressure system moves up into Canada. Some lingering snowfall will be left over for the Great Lakes region, and we will also see some new snowfall beginning in the interior Northeast, mostly light to moderate in intensity as this system passes through. By the time we reach Monday, the first of the month, that system will have moved out, but we can already see a second snowstorm beginning to form. Here we have this northern piece of energy and this southern piece of energy where both jet streams are beginning to combine. This is truly going to come together to create an interesting situation for the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. So let's watch how this plays out. That is on Monday the 1st. As we head into the morning of Tuesday the 2nd, we see a great deal of that snowfall over the Midwest. It then moves into the Ohio Valley and parts of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, where it is expected to really intensify by the time we reach that evening. This is the forecast for 7 in the evening on Tuesday. We see moderate to heavy snowfall for Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, with New York City right on the edge of the system. The same is true for coastal Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Boston. Southeastern Massachusetts is also right on that line, where the precipitation could be either snow rain or a mix of both. If we see the storm track shift any further south, bringing in colder air that would result in a significant snow event for them. However, if we see any northward trends in the track, we will likely see more of a rain event. So the forecast for these areas is still uncertain and will likely come down to the final hours. But heavy snowfall is expected for southern New England, southern New York, northern New Jersey, and a large portion of Pennsylvania, as well as back into Ohio and West Virginia by this point. As we look a little later, we can see this low-pressure system is very strong with a pressure of 985 millibars. This would be later in the evening around 1 in the morning on December 3rd, which will be a Wednesday. A 985 millibar low is quite potent. This is a very strong nor'easter situated just offshore, and with it we have heavy snowfall from southern New York into southern New England and then into parts of southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire, and coastal Maine, where significant accumulations of snow are likely. I believe this area covering southern New England and southern New York is the one to watch for potentially the highest snowfall totals from this event. As we continue, this storm comes to an end by the time we reach later in the morning on Wednesday the 3rd. Once it has passed, we will be left with very cold air in its wake, and we will see some lake effect snowfall occurring. We then get a clipper system, as you can see here around Thursday the 4th, that moves into the northern plains and the upper Midwest. This will bring some light to moderate snowfall to the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and parts of the Northeast around the 5th and 6th of the month. At this same time, we have a great deal of northern energy diving southward and a perfectly positioned jet stream that looks like this, which would create an ideal setup for parts of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast to see a snow event. However, this southern stream is just a bit too far to the south on this particular model run. This forecast is for about 6 or 7 days from now, so in theory, this could be a time frame to watch closely around the 5th, 6th, and 7th of the month. I am certainly keeping an eye on that period for perhaps another interesting weather situation for some of these areas. We see it does not completely materialize on this particular run, but we do get the low developing. It is just too far south. Then we see another storm system. This one affects parts of the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Northeast, and the Mid-Atlantic around the 7th, 8th, and 9th as more Arctic air moves in. And then we get this interesting setup once again. We see an active northern jet moving through, but a bit farther to the south this time. The southern jet stream wants to merge with it. We already have a strong low-pressure system there over the Gulf states. And as you can see on this model run for the 9th, here we see the potential for a winter storm that is deeper in the south, affecting Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, as well as West Virginia, Kentucky, and Virginia. The low-pressure center is shown here off the coast of South Carolina with a pressure of 998 millibars. This would be a true nor'easter. It appears to want to track just like this. This would present an opportunity for these areas, but this is quite far out in the forecast, about 11 days from now, so please approach this with caution. This forecast is most certainly subject to change, to say the very least. As we head towards Wednesday, we see this system begin to pull up the coast, bringing some of the upper southeast and lower mid-Atlantic some heavier snowfall. Then it does not quite make it all the way up to the northeast. We do, however, remain under the influence of very, very cold air. And what is interesting is that while we see this storm, we also have a separate clipper system. It will be moving through at the same time up here in the upper Midwest, bringing some light to moderate snowfall. And that system does make its way through the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and into the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast as well. Then we get yet another clipper system here for the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast. And this one, as you can see, it moves through right to about here. The jet stream, however, is typically diving a little bit farther south than that by the time it has arrived, and we do have this piece of southern energy that looks well positioned to take a track up the eastern states. Again, there is plenty of cold air in place, and this could put these areas on high alert once more. That amounts to perhaps 7, 8, or even 9 opportunities for snow systems here over the next 15 days. That is an incredibly active pattern. So let's see where the GFS model is in agreement. We obviously see our current snow system. We also see the East Coast system as well. This model places the rain snow line a little farther to the north. We can see New York City is not even in the mix for snow. It is definitely in the rain along with Providence, Boston, and Philadelphia. It is even more clear on this run. So this forecast is a little farther northward, favoring the interior mid-Atlantic and northeast for snow. There is still some disagreement between these models, and then that system moves out. We do see some frequent clipper systems moving through, and another East Coast threat appears here around the 6th or 7th. Again, this is the same time frame that I was advising you to watch on the European model. So we do see some snowfall appearing here within the 10-day range. This is not necessarily in the long-range part of the forecast, so we still have some time to monitor it. And that system does move up into the northeast. And then we get this kind of setup where if there was Arctic air moving into the east, you would have an ample amount of energy out here. But instead, what we end up with is the northern jet moving through with a weaker low-pressure system here. Our southern jet is separated from it, and we have another weaker low down here as well. So it is all rather separated on the GFS model run around this time frame. We do get another East Coast and Ohio Valley area threat here around the 8th, 9th, and 10th. So that is a similar storm signal to what the European model showed. And then we see more of a Midwest and Great Lakes cutter type of storm there around the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th. And then finally, the GFS model brings us into a warmer pattern. You might recall from the last few model runs that originally the GFS model suggested, hey, around the 8th we are going to move to a warmer pattern. Then yesterday it pushed that back to the 10th when it thought we would see a warmer pattern. And now it is showing that shift occurring after the 12th or 13th, so it keeps pushing the start of the warmer period back by multiple days with every single new model run. This does not lend a great deal of confidence right now in some sort of a flip to warmer temperatures. Of course, it could happen, but when we see the model behaving this way, continually delaying the forecast change, it is typically a sign that it is struggling to get a handle on the pattern. We will see what ends up happening with that. Looking at the total precipitation on the European model, one would never believe we are in a La Niña year because you have this very, very active southern jet stream moving through and off the east coast. This is very characteristic of an El Niño, but you also have that Arctic air that you typically see in more of a weak La Niña or a neutral ENSO pattern appearing. And I wanted to make the argument today, just based on everything I have seen, and what we now know is coming, I feel that the conditions we are seeing are much more similar to a neutral ENSO state compared to a La Niña. That is just my observation thus far. Obviously, there is a great deal of winter, all of the winter ahead of us. Meteorological winter officially starts on December 1st, which is in 2 days. So there is plenty of time for things to change a bit, but for now, neutral ENSO-type conditions are much more descriptive of what we are observing. Looking at the anomalies, again, you have this active clipper track moving through here, and then you have the southern jet with the nor'easters sometimes in combination. I must point out that we have drawn comparisons all year long to the winter of 2013 to 2014 and 2014 to 2015. Those are 2 of the strongest analog years for this winter, and those years featured frequent clippers and frequent nor'easters. Sometimes the 2 types of storms would combine where we would see a clipper system transfer its energy and redevelop off the east coast. We call that a Miller B nor'easter, where it moves halfway off the coast and then strengthens as it moves north instead of developing fully over the ocean. Now, let's examine the snowfall forecast for the East Coast, where we find a very interesting comparison. The European model is predicting significant snowfall for the plains, the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Ohio Valley from our current system, and also a series of clippers. Then it shows substantial snowfall from the upcoming 2nd and 3rd systems for the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. We also see another system that extends this area of snowfall into more of the southern Mid-Atlantic region, making for a very active period. In contrast, the GFS model does not include that southern nor'easter, but it does forecast numerous systems moving through the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Ohio Valley. We also see 1 or 2 coastal systems for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast in that forecast. So we have fairly good agreement on precipitation. Regarding temperatures, the European model is the colder of the 2. We are currently under our first Arctic blast. Our second Arctic blast is expected to move in for the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th of the month, and then we will see our 3rd Arctic blast as well as our 4th by the 7th. Following that, our 5th, which appears more significant, arrives around the 7th. This continues through the 8th and 9th, and then it looks as though we are getting our 5th, or perhaps 6th blast, around the 13th and 14th. This is very similar to what we discussed yesterday, frequent Arctic blasts and the potential for repeated snow systems. That is a powerful combination. And I will say, I have very rarely seen this for the first half of December in my years of forecasting. I have seen active late Decembers, and of course into the January timeframe as last year was a great example, but for early December it has been a very long time. Now looking at the GFS model's temperature forecast, it shows Arctic blast number 1. A 2nd moves in, and a 3rd appears very intense. The 4th and 5th are less so, as is the 6th. These are more like typical cooldowns. Then we do see a shift to a warmer pattern. As you can see, this develops around the 13th, 14th, and 15th, which I should note is approximately 13 or 14 days out from now. Our confidence is not especially high in a pattern change that far in the future, although it is a signal to watch. We will certainly monitor that for you. The ensemble models for the 4th through the 14th on the European model clearly show warmth in the west and a cold in the east pattern. It is a very clear and consistent signal through and through. There is no way around it. This is what that model is seeing for the 4th through the 14th. Looking at the GFS ensemble model, it does show the warmth out west very similarly. It also indicates some Arctic air working its way into the east, but it appears less potent and less frequent throughout that entire time period. There is a little more of a southeast ridge present. It is a minor feature, but it is resulting in some warmer temperatures on this model for the deep southeast. So there are small disagreements, but the fundamental premise of the forecast is quite similar on both these models. It is truly remarkable weather. With all of that being said, I hope you will be sure to subscribe. We upload a new forecast every single day. You can even press the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so that you never miss one. We would also appreciate it if you would like the video if you did enjoy it.